Hello, today what we're going to be talking about is trust and how to rebuild trust once it's been broken. What are the important things that we need to think about? What sort of actions do we need to take? And learning to trust yourself again. So I just want to start with, oftentimes when I'm working with couples or even with individuals, somewhere along the line a betrayal has occurred or trust has been broken. And once trust has been broken, we really have to work on how do we rebuild it. So I think, there's some good resources that I have often recommended to couples. One is a book called What Makes Love Last: How to Build Trust and Avoid Betrayal by Dr. John Gottman. I think that book really highlights and points out the important components of what kind of betrayals can hit a marriage or a relationship, and how to start healing and working through the betrayal of trust, how to rebuild it, and the importance of learning to trust again. I also find Esther Perel's work and Terry Real, both of their works are really important in terms of relationships and how to rebuild once trust has been broken. So let me just start with, in the book What Makes Love Last, Dr. Gottman talks a lot about the 5 components of trust, and that really is important to think about when you're thinking about this big word of trust. I like how you kind of break it down into the different components, and so it's not just like we got to focus on this big word of trust and that feels really scary. Break it down, and if you look at these 5 different components, it's, today or this week as a couple, what are we going to work on when we're trying to work on rebuilding trust? So the 5 components, according to Dr. Gottman, are honesty, accountability, transparency, ethical action, and proof of alliance. And proof of alliance is, how are we working together as a team? Can I rely on and depend on my partner? And it's I really like to work on that one first, just as a way to say, as a team, how do you want to start working together and really rebuilding trust? The other thing that I think is really important with couples when we're starting to rebuild trust is defining or redefining what trust means and what they want it to look like in their relationship. It's not just about, what I say or what Dr. Gottman says or Esther Perel. It's really, for the couple. What does a couple, when they envision or dream about having trust again in their relationship, what does that look like? And really getting the couple to clearly define what trust is, and if they have their own, different components of trust that they want to break down, then we can work on that as well. Terry Real says essential trust is living with what you don't know. And when that is broken, you really have to kind of sit with that for a minute, grieve the loss, and start working on how to rebuild once you've worked through your grief. Oftentimes after we grieve the loss of that essential trust, we forgive, hopefully, and then we start to move forward. And I want to say that that's not something that comes easily. You can have essential trust in your relationship. It's just going to look different. And I often tell people, different's not bad, it's just different. When trust has been broken, we really have to grieve the loss of that old relationship. And oftentimes we don't want to do that. We want to hold on to, well, this part was good, or this part was wonderful, or, I had no idea that this was going on and I thought everything was fine. And, there's a lot of grief and sorrow and anger or disappointment. And so I think it's really important to kind of stop and pause. And so, grieve the loss of the old relationship, and, through time and through working together, we start to take one, step forward. And it's not like we just jump back into, okay, everything's great, we're just going to trust again. It really is, it's so many different parts. It is kind of saying, not only what do we want trust to look like again and how do we want to define that, it's grieving the loss of the old relationship, it's finding forgiveness, it's acceptance, it's also, kind of creating a new relationship again and working together with a couple. And I do want to reiterate, guys, I know that this is just about trust today, but when we're working together to try to rebuild trust, it is not something that just happens overnight. It is a choice that both the couple makes, that they are willing and committed to stepping forward into rebuilding the relationship and trusting again. But it does take time. And so please allow yourself time to grieve the loss, to start, thinking about ways that not only are you taking care of yourself, but that you're willing to put one foot in front of the other with your partner. And, part of this too, that I think is another important component, is learning to trust yourself. Sometimes I get people saying, well, I thought everything was fine, then this happened, and so how can I trust that, I'm going to step into this again and I'm going to think everything is fine, and then what if something happens? And we go through all the what ifs. And I think that that is when we stop, we take a deep breath, and we start to think about, do you trust yourself? And what that means is, if something feels off, or if there are times that you really want to speak up, or you have a disagreement, do it. If you feel like something's off, then start to talk to your partner about it, not in an accusatory way, but just in a, I'm feeling disconnected, or I'm feeling off, or, can we take some time and connect, or just turn off the TV and talk. It's really kind of stating how you feel and, what you're going to do differently when you're rebuilding trust. And so it's, if you notice same behaviors or similar behaviors, or if, again, you just feel like something's off, talk to your spouse about it. I think that is so important. Learning to trust yourself is part of the process. It's not just about what your partner is going to do differently if you've been the one that's been betrayed. It is, what are you going to do differently this next time around? And so when you're working on rebuilding trust, it's not just one person fixing it, it's both of you. And, so I say it's both and, it's not one or the other. So remember, part of rebuilding trust is learning to trust yourself. It is also saying, what am I willing to do differently to move forward into this relationship? And really looking at that. Do you really want to move forward into this relationship? And not out of fear, but out of, I want to stay committed and connected to my partner. And that's another thing I want to talk about, is fear. Fear is that little voice in your head that says your partner's going to hurt you again. What are you doing? Jump ship now, and get out. Never trust anyone again. Everyone's just going to hurt you. Just protect yourself, stay disconnected, avoid everybody. That's fear. And we all have that little voice that, especially when we have been hurt, that we just put up the wall and say, no way, I'm not going to get into another relationship. I'm not going to trust anyone ever again. I'm not going to trust this person again. I am so deeply hurt. And all I have to do is protect myself. And, first, just acknowledge that fear is there. And fear isn't a bad thing unless we let it paralyze us. And if we make the choice to jump into our fear and not turn towards healing the relationship or healing ourselves, then fear will take over, and fear will paralyze you. I think that in the beginning stages, when we've been betrayed, we do put up that wall, and that is so understandable. You've just been so deeply hurt by the betrayal, whatever that is. And so you have to take time to acknowledge that fear, to acknowledge, and really what's underneath fear at that point is your pain and your heartbreak. And, staying just, that's the time that you've really has to take care of yourself. You have to acknowledge your hurt and your pain, and don't just mask it with fear. I remember at a time when I was really heartbroken and I went through my biggest heartbreak, all I wanted to do was put a blanket over my head and cry and, not jump into another relationship. You get so afraid that the person that hurt you is just gonna, excuse me, is just gonna keep hurting you, or, you keep recalling the time that you found out about the betrayal. And so I think that it's really important to stop and take a deep breath. And, when I was going through my heartbreak, the thing that helped me the most, well, there were several things, but, one of the things was not staying in bed, but is allowing myself to have those moments of the ugly cry and the tears and acknowledging my fear, but also being connected to the people that actually love me and that supported me through those dark times. And so it's trusting myself to connect to other people that I knew were going to help me. So it's important to, really think about when you're going through the initial stage of figuring out the betrayal, that you identify a support network. And I tell couples all the time that are really trying to rebuild, it is good to have a support network. It is good to focus on how to, as we're healing and trying to rebuild trust and create a new relationship, how do we, kind of have light moments when we're going through the stress of healing and rebuilding trust and rebuilding the relationship. We also have to have moments where we really need to laugh together, play together, and remember that friendship connection. Dr. Gottman talks about the foundation of a relationship is your intimate friendship. And I tell couples all the time, when there has been, that heartbreak, or when there has been that betrayal of trust, one of the things that we absolutely have to do is we have to go back and reconnect to our friendship. Remember the things and also participate in the things that brought us together in the first place. I want to go back to the components of trust: honesty, accountability, ethical action, transparency, and proof of alliance. Honesty is that's really important. Am I being honest with my spouse? Am I being, clean? Am I being authentic? And really moving forward, and it's that kind of self-check. Accountability, holding yourself accountable for the times, for the actual betrayal, if you're the one that betrayed. And also holding yourself accountable for, as we start to move forward, what are the things, what's my part in it, what am I responsible for, how am I working together on moving forward in the relationship. So, if you're the one that was, or committed the betrayal, you're saying, these are the things that I'm willing to do to move forward. And the person or the hurt partner is willing to say, this is what I'm willing to do to move forward. So again, it goes back to that both and approach, not one or the other. And then I think, transparency, people ask me this all the time when the betrayal has been an affair, an emotional or physical affair. What does transparency mean? And does that mean I'm checking the phone all the time, or I'm checking the emails, I'm checking all the bills, I'm showing up at work, at the other person's work unannounced? And, what I want to say to that is transparency is not surveillance. Transparency is being open and honest in the relationship. In the beginning, if it has been an emotional or physical affair, it is, having access to phones, computers, and all of that. But I tell couples, it's not like secretly, okay, he's in the shower or she's in the shower, now I'm going to check all the phones and check the computer. It's, I'm feeling, the hurt partner says something like, I had a trigger, or I'm feeling lost or disconnected. Can we look at this together? And then the person that committed the infidelity says yes. And sometimes what I have found is when the hurt partner is given full access, they rarely check, maybe one or two times, and then that's it. If the hurt partner gets caught up in secret, like keeping the secret of how often they're surveillancing, or the continued surveillance, like almost 24/7, then that's not going to help heal the relationship. And oftentimes, if I notice that in the therapeutic setting, I'll do a couple of individual sessions to work on the trauma. So I think that is important. Transparency is not surveillancing. So remember that. Transparency is openness It's a willingness to look at things together and moving forward in that way. The ethical action, what that is really just, is my partner and am I acting in ways that are aligned with our beliefs and values in our relationship moving forward. And so, Dr. Gottman talks about in a relationship, it's also important to have a shared meaning system. What are our beliefs or values about our relationship, how we define partnership or marriage, and kind of when a betrayal has happened, it's usually a disconnect from that. So it's important to say, from this point moving forward, are we aligned in moving together with our shared beliefs and value system? And then, as I said, proof of alliance is really, how are we working together as a team? And are we, aligned not only with our beliefs and values, but what's partnership? What's the meaning of partnership? What's the meaning of being a couple? How can we rely on and depend on one another? And that's as simple as, like, if I call, and I say, hey, I need some milk, I know that my partner's going to get it. And that's one thing that I appreciate about him. So I think that, that might seem very simple, but that is really important. And it's also bigger things too. But, a bigger thing, when trust has been broken, it's hard to jump right back into, can I rely on, depend on my partner either to get milk, or can I rely on or depend on my partner to listen to how I'm feeling for the day, or to be vulnerable again. So, those 5 components I think are super important. And please remember, when you're looking at rebuilding trust, it's not just, this big word of trust. It is breaking it down. How do we want to redefine it? It is how the essential trust piece, learning to trust again. It's learning, it's grieving the loss of the relationship, and it's also understanding trust isn't going to be the exact same. It's going to be different, and different's not bad. It's just different. It's both of you having the willingness to move forward in rebuilding trust. It's not just one person. It's both of you. It's learning to trust yourself again. And, another part of this is reassurance, and giving each other reassurance that you're in this together. So sometimes people say, well, I didn't do anything wrong and I don't need to give reassurance. And I think, there's 2 things to that. If there's been, let's say, an infidelity, then the involved partner, the one that committed the act of infidelity, does have to do a little bit more in the beginning. And what I mean by that is the involved partner needs to say, this is what I'm willing to turn towards you and give you the reassurance. What do you need? And sometimes it's agreeing to go on date nights. It's agreeing to have a night where you turn off the phone and you discuss, how you're rebuilding the relationship. It's sending little messages of, I'm here, I'm committed to you, I love you. It's doing those little things. I have a couple kind of define what kind of reassurances they need. And the part of the hurt partner in terms of reassurance, I just ask if the hurt partner is at least willing to kind of step forward and accept the reassurance in those moments instead of staying blocked and guarded. Remember what I said earlier, we have to appreciate our fear and acknowledge that it's there because we do not want to get hurt again. But if we let it paralyze us, if we're working on rebuilding the relationship, then we're not willing to step forward to accept the reassurance or the involved partner trying to heal the relationship. Again, to me, it goes back to both and, not one or the other. And, so I think part of reassurance is actions. It's not just what I say, it's what I do. So, if I'm saying I'm willing to commit to, once a week sitting down and going through the kind of like how we're doing couples meeting and talking about, what's working and what we need to improve on, then I'm actually going to sit down and I'm going to start or initiate that meeting with my partner. If I'm willing to say, hey, I am going to send you a text message every morning right when you get to work and say, I hope you have a great day, then I am going to sit down and send that text message right when I know my partner is going to work. If in the beginning there's been a betrayal and someone needs to like screenshot if they go out with their friends, let me screenshot where I'm at so I know that you'll know that I'm where I'm saying I'm at, then you actually have to do that. So again, it's not just what I say, because let's face it, when trust has been broken, you don't believe, in the beginning, you don't believe what the other person is saying. And so, taking that time to say, it's not what I say, it's what I do, and what kind of agreements are we putting in place to really work on rebuilding trust. The last thing I think I want to say is that Dr. Gottman says, learning to trust again is a life-saving skill. That's actually one of the chapters in the book, What Makes Love Last. And he does some research on how trust is good for your health. And in there, he does say, and I think this is really important, learning to trust again and to be vulnerable again is a risk, because it absolutely is, but it is absolutely worth the risk. It's worth a risk to learn how to be vulnerable again with your partner or your spouse. It's worth the risk to, say, hey, let's work on this together and see if we can rebuild trust and create a new healthy relationship. So I think, again, that's something you say when fear pops up. I'm afraid, and it's okay to be afraid, but also know learning to trust again is an important process in your physical health, your emotional health, and your decision to stay in the relationship. One more thing I do want to acknowledge, sometimes we decide to not stay in the relationship, and that's okay too. Part of that chapter and what I just talked about is if you decide to not stay in the relationship, it is still valuable to learn to trust in a new relationship. And, there are some relationships that don't work out, guys, and I don't think people should stay in unhealthy relationships or in toxic relationships or in abusive relationships. If one partner continues to betray, then you really have to look at that. If you come up with these agreements and one partner continues to not align with the agreements, then you really have to say, is this someone that I want to stay in a relationship with? If I'm the hurt partner and I know that I just can't trust again, then I have to look at that too. So I'm not here to say stay or go. I'm here to say, you've got to look at all the different components that make up a relationship. Most of this video is if you both have decided that you do want to work on rebuilding trust together, and that's how you do it. And if you're still lost, if you're still confused, if fear is still taking over, please contact a local therapist and go in and meet with that local therapist and go through, all your mixed emotions that you might be feeling to give you some guidance when you're looking at how you rebuild trust. Have a great day.